The only local news teams taking action for you. KIMA Keeper Action News starts now.
Well, Merry Christmas Eve, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jedediah Hoyt. Storm Tracker Charity Caldwell is live in our weather center with your first look at this forecast. Charity, how are we looking for the holiday?
Well, you know, Jed, this mostly cloudy skies, we have seen that for a while now. Lots of gray days, maybe some sunshine yesterday, but today is certainly another one of those gray days and very cold at that. Here's a look at your almanac for Tri-Cities. Today we saw a high of 35 and a low of 20, so very chilly out there. I know I certainly had my gloves on today, and here's your almanac for Yakima, a high of 36 today and a low of 20 as well. So it is very crisp out there and the perfect weather for Christmas. And look at this, here's your weather headline. So we will all see a chance of a wintry mix on Christmas. I don't know about a white Christmas, but hopefully we will see some flurries come down tomorrow. Showers this week once we pass Christmas, and a mostly cloudy week ahead once again. But be sure to stay with me because I'll tell you more about this week coming up in your full Storm Tracker forecast in just a bit.
Thank you, Charity. And speaking of chilly, slick roads again this morning for some drivers. Law enforcement agencies say if there's ice on your windows, there is almost certainly ice on the roads. The Franklin County Sheriff's Office this morning took to social media with these pictures, really showing the frost near Glade North. The Sheriff's Office says if you're headed out on the roads, to please slow down and think about increasing the distance between you and other vehicles. Tonight, getting home for the holidays appears to have mostly been a smooth experience for millions on the move. CBS's Elise Preston is at Los Angeles International Airport.
Americans made it home to enjoy Christmas Eve even after a massive holiday rush at airports. TSA screened nearly 2.6 million passengers Saturday, slightly lower than the busiest day, which was Friday, with almost 2.8 million.
I think the airport is, compared to usually, it's not much going on. You know, it's fabulous.
Flyers are relieved that there's no repeat of last year's Christmas chaos, where winter weather wreaked havoc, triggering a 10-day meltdown at Southwest Airlines. More than 2 million passengers were impacted. This time last year, flight cancellations were in the thousands, compared to around 350 this weekend. And a scare for one family, Jerica, after Spirit Airlines put a 6-year-old boy on the wrong plane. The child was supposed to arrive in Fort Myers, Florida, but was instead sent to Orlando, where his grandmother had to pick him up. Spirit Airlines, which says the boy was never left alone, has apologized.
The Washington State Patrol is investigating a head-on crash just off the Blue Bridge in Pasco. They say both drivers were under the influence. According to troopers, 26-year-old Esteban Francisco Diego was driving south in the northbound lanes towards the bridge at 12:45 this morning without headlights on when he slammed into 37-year-old Angelica Garcia. They were both taken to separate hospitals, and both are being charged with DUI. A man has been arrested following a SWAT incident in Pasco yesterday evening. Police say around 7 p.m. they were called to Road 32, receiving reports of a domestic violence situation. They tell us probable cause was developed to arrest the man, who hasn't yet been identified, after he allegedly committed felony assaults against family members. SWAT was called to the residence when he refused to exit the home, which had weapons inside, but he was eventually taken into custody and booked into jail. In a large shop fire in Findlay prompts an area-wide fire response early this morning. According to Benton County Fire District Number 1, they were dispatched just past midnight to an address off Game Farm Road. When crews arrived, they found a large shop fully engulfed in flames, but they were eventually able to bring the fire under control. There were no reported injuries, but the shop is a total loss. There is no word yet on what caused the blaze. In Kent, a vehicular homicide incident involving an excavator. KOMO News reporter Paul Rivera tells us more.
It was a morning series of events that Kent police say ended with a suspect on the run and a man dead. On Southeast 234th Street, police responding to a separate call noticed a truck pulling an excavator on a trailer, driving erratically, hitting a stop sign, but they didn't chase to comply with state law. You can still see the police tape left behind and the damage. This is the part where the excavator detached from the truck and fell right over here. Police also found a 29-year-old man here with serious injuries who later died. Officers said a stolen gun was found with that man. Then, minutes down the road, police say the truck was abandoned at this intersection and the suspect got away. One anonymous resident who lives in the area said crime is getting out of hand around here.
Nothing's going to happen to these people. Slap on the wrist, and they're out the next day. The cops definitely have their hands tied, and they know it.
This home surveillance video from around that time also shows a truck quickly speeding away and drifting through a neighborhood street. Kent police say everything involved in this incident was stolen: the truck, the excavator, and trailer. That resident with a message to city government.
They need to do something about this area. It's real bad. Why are we paying our taxes? For what?
Kent police want you to reach out to them if you know anything about the suspect involved in this crime. Reporting in Kent, Paul Rivera, KOMO News.
The world is celebrating Christmas Eve, and Santa Claus is already on the move. But unfortunately, it's not a happy time everywhere in the world. CBS News correspondent Wendy Gillette has more on this year's big day from New York.
There's an excited hum among volunteers handling Christmas duties with the North American Aerospace Defense Command, tasked with tracking Santa.
While Santa doesn't file a flight plan with NORAD, we know from his historical flight path that he usually reaches homes between about 9 and 11 p.m. And the rule is, if you're not in bed, he's going to pass by.
This giant sand sculpture will greet Santa in India. In Madrid, Spain, thousands of festive runners took part in an annual charity run. But it's not such a Merry Christmas in other parts of the world. Security was tightened at Cologne Cathedral in Germany amid recent government warnings about the rising threat of Islamist violence. In Jerusalem's Old City, bells tolled above empty streets and stores because of the war between Israel and Hamas.
Usually it's a hive of activity with all the pilgrims that come, but this year it's very solemn.
And in Bethlehem, what's normally a crowded, festive time of year is anything but, as Christmas events were canceled.
The whole world is celebrating Christmas this year, but not Bethlehem, not the birthplace of our Lord Jesus Christ.
In questa notte santissima,
Pope Francis led Christmas Eve Mass and a prayer event from the papal apartments, renewing calls for peace in the Middle East and Ukraine. Wendy Gillette, CBS News.
Jerusalem's Latin Patriarch also called for peace while walking to the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem. A new movie opening on Christmas tells the true story based on a best-selling book of a UW rowing team thrust into the spotlight as they compete in Berlin for the 1936 Olympics. We'll be right back.
We're keeping the roads a little safer tonight, Washington. Together, we get there.
Former President Trump is asking a federal appeals court to toss his 2020 election interference case in D.C. In a filing Saturday night, Trump's attorneys reiterated their push for the appeals court to overturn a lower court's ruling that rejected Trump's immunity claim. That's an argument Trump introduced in October, saying his actions leading up and during the January 6 Capitol riots are protected by presidential immunity. The filing comes just one day after the Supreme Court declined special counsel Jack Smith's request to rule on whether this is a valid argument. The cost for True Love's gifts, as outlined in the 12 Days of Christmas, increased to a little bit more than $46,000 this year. That's according to PNC Bank's Christmas Price Index, which found the price of services outpacing goods. The cost for 4 calling birds, 5 golden rings, and 7 swans a swimming stayed flat. But drummers drumming, pipers piping, and lords a leaping will cost 4 to 6% more, representing the rise of demand for live performances and concerts. And although the cost of a partridge stayed unchanged, there was a 15% jump for the pear tree, a proxy for housing costs that continue to move even higher. From the removal of the Speaker of the House to the expulsion of a congressman, it was a historic year in Congress. Chief political correspondent Scott Thuman takes us through 2023 on Capitol Hill.
As the year wraps up, lawmakers are looking back on what some would call a tough first year of the 118th Congress.
Well, we had too much infighting on our side of the aisle that really curtailed our ability over a year-long legislative schedule to get some of the things we need to be done.
Congressman, will you resign?
While there were a number of significant events, the Speaker losing his position of power,
the office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
A member of Congress kicked out,
You guys gotta get out of my way.
and censure for yet another.
That the House of Representatives censures Jamal Bowman, representative from the 16th Congressional District of New York.
Lawmakers say there were some positive takeaways, both personally and for the legislative body as a whole.
We extended the debt ceiling and established a baseline for spending for 2 years. That was important.
Our border bill, if I had to pick one thing that I'm most proud of, I would say that's it.
Despite division on issues like immigration and health care, there are members who say bipartisanship still exists, even when it doesn't seem like it.
There's a lot of legislation we introduce pretty regularly that gets passed quietly. Sadly, all the major pieces of legislation, what's going on the border, what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on with government funding, drowns it all out.
I'm an optimist or I wouldn't be in this business. You have to pick your battles.
But going into 2024, the vast majority of Americans continue to be disappointed with Congress's job performance. A recent Gallup poll shows just 15% of voters approve of the job their representatives and senators are doing, with a whopping 82% disapproving. Lawmakers are gearing up for a busy year ahead, including negotiations to avoid a government shutdown in the coming weeks, and of course, the November elections. In Washington, I'm Scott Thuman.
We may be reveling the UW football team's run for a national championship, but another Husky team's triumph is about to hit the big screen. The Boys in the Boat opens on Christmas Day. It's the story of the Olympic gold medal rowing team from 1936. Como's Lee Stoll looks at what it took to get the book and movie made with George Clooney.
If you want to look back at the legacy of rowing at the University of Washington, just look up.
This is the shell. This is the shell. This is the shell from 36? Yes.
One seat is sacred to Judy Rance Willman. Her dad, Joe Rance, was part of the Husky team that won gold at the 1936 Olympics in Nazi Germany.
What do you think he would think of all of this?
Well, like I said, he was basically a humble person. He didn't want the story to be just about him. He wanted it to be about the boat.
The story, based on the best-selling book The Boys in the Boat, will now play out on the big screen as a movie directed by George Clooney.
That bunch of kids rode like no one else that's ever come through here. Everybody else tires and it just gets stronger.